Welcome to the Empowered Team podcast. I am excited to join you with a special guest. Her name is Terez Rijkenberg. Wait, did I pronounce that right? No, I
Right,
didn't. Did
Reichenberg. That's
Rijkenberg.
not a problem. There, it's always such a hard name to pronounce. Yeah, but
But the
Reichenberg.
funniest, okay, this is so good because the funniest part about this, that's one of the questions I always ask guests ahead of time. Am I pronouncing this right? But because we've known each other for so long, I was just like blurring it into my brain and not pronouncing it correctly. Oh my
Oh,
God,
it's not a
Reichenberg.
problem. Not a problem at all.
I just butchered it on air. I love it. And I'm leaving this in there. I'm not even going to edit it out because it's so human.
No, it's good. I think this is such an important thing, right? We're talking to people from different cultures all the time. We're not going to get any of this stuff right, and we've got to allow ourselves to forgive ourselves and forgive other people for not getting this stuff right. It's just the way of the world.
Oh,
Yeah,
this
it's
is
no
so
problem.
perfect because so that our audience knows, you are an executive coach and chief people officer
Hmm.
of Socium 10X.
Hmm.
And what you do, you have an MBA, but you are helping the people who are leading companies, helping the people, everyone from elite athletes to PhDs to company CEOs to all sorts of people who you actually you coach my husband as well. So
That's
I think
correct.
that's an
Yes.
amazing thing.
Yes.
So you are a person who gets to get just like me. I don't often have coaches on. I often have other people who might have been in the business world or health world or authors. And so to have another coach on, I'm so excited and one that I know so well. So I'm happy to have you. I can't wait to
Thank
dive
you.
in. Welcome,
Mm.
Terez, and let's go into all of the things that help us become the best leaders we possibly can be as an executive coach. So,
Mm.
first question, how how did you find yourself on this path of coaching? You have an MBA, you probably could have gone
Mm.
into any number of vocations. What has you so lit up? Because just looking at you and talking to you, I know how lit up you are by helping other people in this realm of coaching. What brought you to executive coaching?
So that's a really great question. And it's it's quite a vulnerable story. So I'll share it as best I can. Because it was when I was becoming a mom. I was pregnant with my son, and at the same time, I was working for a corporate organization. I was studying an MBA at the same time, and I was incredibly naive at that time, thinking that I'd be able to have a baby and finish my MBA and, work in a corporate organization all at the same time and do it all successfully. And I had my son, and I just went through postpartum depression. And it was a long time. It took a long time for me to actually firstly acknowledge that that was happening, that I went through, quite a part of a bit of denial, maybe for a whole year. But I just struggled through that year. I was really struggling. I was just not operating at my best. And I always just felt like I was operating at 40% in all areas of my life. Um, I left the corporate world at the same time and then tried to start my own business, but it was just so much added pressure and so many things that were happening for me. And, you can look at those things and say, yes, it was all of that pressure that you were adding to yourself that was creating that depression or adding to that depression or adding to that struggle. But there was actually a very huge realization that I had. So it was at that time that I started to listen to the Life Coach School podcast. Someone had put me, had recommended it, and it was on one of the episodes where Brooke Castillo says, "Your thoughts are optional." She said, "Your thoughts are optional. The thoughts that you tell yourself are all optional." And I thought, really? Because I knew that I kept telling myself Terez, you're not good enough. Terez, you're not good enough. That was just the words that I'd kept saying to myself over and over again. You're not good enough. You're not doing good enough. You're not a good enough mom. You're not a good enough business person. You're not a good enough wife. And that was just the theme that just kept going over and over in my mind. And she said, you know, thoughts are optional. You can choose them. And I think in a later podcast episode that I heard, she asked a question where she said something along the lines of, well, what if you're already good enough? What if that was just not even it wasn't even a question that you needed to ask, like, am I good enough? Like, what if you were just already good enough and already worthy and already just amazing just for being you, just because? And that just blew my mind. And so it was at that time that I decided to look more into this and get coaching myself. And I was really able to transform I would say my depression in that time. I was really able to just transform how I was feeling, what I was telling myself. And then all the results started to happen from that. Now, I would never, I really want to go on your podcast and say there are people who experience depression and who need medication and who need therapy and they need help for sure. For me, this was my experience where I know that it was just a switch in mindset that was able to turn me out of that depression and into a position where I felt way more in control of how I was feeling and what was actually happening for me. That was my experience. So everybody's experience is different. But yeah, tell me.
I was just going to say that's so powerful in so many ways, because people can go down that that rabbit hole, if you will, of even then questioning, well, why am I like this? Why am I thinking this way? Why am I feeling this way? And feeling more of not good enough, or more of what's wrong with me, or I need to be fixed, or and then that opens the door for many people to think that, well, that means it's a long, drawn out process, and I'm scared of that. I don't want to do that. It's a big journey. And what you're pointing to right here is that in your experience, it wasn't that. It was a matter of, wait a second, what if it's a complete paradigm shift in a moment, a complete erasing of belief system in a moment, something that just transformed your life because you questioned what you thought was real for the previous years of your life, what you thought you knew was real. And that, to me, I want to emphasize that for listeners, in how powerful that is in just a moment. And it doesn't mean that the pattern or the habit of the other thoughts aren't going to sneak back in, but when it's so profound, the one that you realize, oh, wait a second, what, this is optional. Why would I keep choosing this if this is optional?
Exactly.
If this is causing me so much pain and this is optional. Oh, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Yeah.
So I just want to reiterate in different words what you've said, so that people can receive this in their lives and not have to go, well, and here's the thing I'm gonna just offer here. If we keep going with the previous thought that was causing the pain, there's usually a payoff. It's giving us something. It's giving us something that's serving us. What is this providing? What is this providing? And then when we're aware enough to see that, it can really open our eyes to, oh, wait a second. I'm actually valuing sadness over valuing happiness. I don't realize we like to talk about values a lot in the empowered in our business and what we do. But it's one of those things where people talk about the values that they want, or talk about the values they think look good to other humans, or talk about the values that are accepted in society. But when we really open it up, we might be valuing something and not realizing it, and not realizing how we're getting a payoff from it, even though we're suffering in it. So really
Yeah.
amazing. I find that so fascinating as to, it was so impactful for you, so impactful for your life, that you took your interest in business, you took your interest in the corporate environment, you took your MBA, and then you went and got certified as a life coach in order to really serve other people who are in that corporate environment, who are leaders, who are achievers, to help them with their own minds. Is that accurate?
Yeah, sure. It took me a while to get to that point. So initially, I decided to coach moms who were struggling in the same way that I had. And but there was something just sitting below the surface, always sitting below the surface, where I thought, I really want to, be back in corporate. I really enjoyed that environment. I'd always wanted to be a CEO. I was incredibly ambitious when I was working in a corporate. And I just knew that there was something more, and I wanted to be an executive coach. I wanted to help people at that level because I knew that I could. But it also took me a bit of time to acknowledge, that I could do that, that this was something that I could do, right? You always question yourself, and there's that imposter syndrome that comes up when you're thinking, well, who am I to say that I should be at that level, helping people on an exec level? I haven't had the experience. I haven't been a CEO. I haven't worked at that level. How is it possible that I should be able to help them? And there was again something that just, I love coaching. I get coached all the time. And one of my coaches at the time when I was struggling through this, she said, well, just own it, own the identity, live into the identity of an executive coach, be the person, and then you will gain the experience of it. Start there, as opposed to trying to gain experience when you're not in full belief of it. And that was just a big switch as well. So it was about being an executive coach and then gaining experience.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was able to do that, I just started to sell myself as an executive coach, and people saw me as an executive coach, and people, signed up, and I started to build my practice, and it just flowed from there, which was exceptional. But that was also such a big shift for me, noticing that it was just the thought that was holding me back. One of those simple things, like, I need experience in order to do this. Actually, no, maybe you don't. Maybe you just need belief in yourself, in your capabilities. And exactly like you said earlier, it's about taking all of those other aspects, the experience that I had in corporate before, the fact that I had an MBA, I had a qualification from the life coach school, taking all of that and actually then using that to say, actually, I'm the best person to coach executives, using the resources that I had at the time.
So this is your own personal experience. I can imagine that you're also seeing people with the same imposter syndrome, despite all this experience or despite the position they have gained. Is that what you find with some of your clients?
Yeah, for sure. And I'm guessing you do the same, Kari. You're an amazing exec coach too. So I'm sure we could have lots of stories on this. But it's so interesting that, people who are at such a high level in their careers, in organizations, or they've had extreme success with what they've, been able to achieve in their careers and in their organizations, this still comes up for them. And what what are your
Oh, I
thoughts
was just
about?
going to say, I was just thinking of a client recently said, well, I think I'll do this for experience. And I said, stop that. You have plenty of experience. That's not the reason you're going to do this particular thing. Don't go and diminish your value, diminish yourself, thinking that you have to get more experience. This person has years of experience. This person has an amazing position and knowledge and expertise in what they did, in what they do, and they didn't need that thought, as you're pointing to, that very powerful thought of, well, maybe I should do this for more experience. That's not the
Mm-hmm.
reason. That can be one of the reasons, but in that particular context, because I knew that client well, I knew that client was using that line, that thought, in order to give themselves permission to do something for the reasons that felt safe instead of the reasons that were really honoring who they are, who they are showing up in the world as. So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting thing as to how we're thinking about things and how we're holding ourselves back by not letting ourselves think of, well, why am I not the right person for this? I
Mm.
am the right person for this. I
Yeah.
am the person that can be the person that leads this company, that helps those people, that starts this project, that makes the difference, that does this new thing that no one's done before. Why not?
Mhm. Yeah. And you don't even have to have a reason to want to do it as well. So it could just be this like underlying sizzle. I kind of felt like that's what it was for me when I decided to become an exec coach. It was just like I just had this thought of like that's what I want to do. I don't have any reason why, but it's just I just felt like that's where I wanted to go. So you don't even need to have a reason to build your experience or because it's credible or because everybody else thinks that's the way to go. I think it's about, like you said, looking for what is within you that's going to allow you to be more of you. What is your heart saying? What is your gut saying that you is the direction that you need to go in? And just go there. You don't even have to have a reason. Just go there. Go in that direction. Be bold enough to step there.
It's such, I love that. I'm going to repeat the thing that you said. It's that you don't have to have a reason. You don't
Mm.
have to have a reason. And that I think is so important because I can't tell you how many people will emphasize the reasons why they didn't or why they can't and
Mm.
not give the same kind of emphasis or weight or time and energy to all the reasons why they want to, all the reasons why they can.
Yeah.
And somewhere
So
in the middle is that you don't need any reason to or to not.
yeah.
Just because you feel like it can be
Yeah.
reason enough
Exactly.
right
Yeah.
there. That's all you
Exactly.
need.
I love it. Exactly. Yeah. And maybe the imposter syndrome is just that logical voice saying back to you like, oh no, there needs to be some logical reason why you're in this place, or there needs to be some logical formulation of experience or tick box that you need to have done in order to be in this space that social conditioning has told you is the right tick box to have. Maybe that's all it is. Maybe that's all imposter syndrome is. And actually, it's about not listening to that voice at all and just listening to the one that's saying, well, actually, I'm here and I can make a difference here. And this is where I want to be. And because I want to be here, I'm actually going to add so much value. That's the thing that's going to create the value.
Have you that value to me when I hear that, it speaks to what someone's either if they have the desire, they're meant to do that. However, if they've felt the imposter syndrome, they've felt held back, and they move forward through it, and they've
Mhm.
become the version of themselves that allows them to do things that they never thought they could before. What
Mhm.
about the people around them? Are you experiencing for yourself, or have you experienced with clients that the other people around, anyone who's broken through to whatever their thing they really wanted, whatever broken through, whatever was holding them back, have you found that for yourself or for others that those around them are going, no, come back to where you were because that's what we expect of you, or because that's who I am
Mm.
most comfortable with, or because that is what I don't want you to change?
I've seen and I'm sure you've seen the same, is that there's multiple ways that this could work. So there are for sure people in our lives which will try and hold you back and keep you back in that safe, comfortable space. Or what sometimes happens as well is that you can inspire other people to go with you. So they either don't come along for the ride, or they do. They do come along for the ride, and they rise up to that challenge, and they're further inspired and grow with you into, you know, that new identity that you've created for yourself, or whatever the case is. So, and I'm sure there's many different facets in between where that, you know, that journey might be slower for some people, but I suppose it's about realizing that some people may not join you on the journey, you know, onto that next identity that you want to create for yourself. And that's okay. That's okay if they're not going to go there. You need to give yourself permission to be able to do that for you, because that's where your value is going to be. That's where your greatness is going to unfold itself. And knowing that it's okay to let some people go who aren't going to come along for the ride. What do you experience? Is it something similar or slightly different?
Yeah, it is that I find for clients and for myself that if it's too far away from, especially the people who are close to someone who's growing, if they're really, really close to someone who's growing, that's when another person might want to hold them in the place that they were. If they're a little further away, then it seems to be more inspiring because it's not as personal. I'm
Interesting.
using hand
Yeah.
signals for those who are on the
Yeah.
podcast versus the YouTube image, but um, I think it does, the context of who it is and the relationship, whether it's a work relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, I think those contexts influence how supportive another person is of growth, or how much they might want to, you know, you've changed in a negative way. You know, I don't like that you've changed versus, wow, look at you. I think that
Sure.
the context of the relationship makes a big difference.
Yeah.
I'm curious about you. You coach people who are in environments. Speaking of the context, speaking of those environments, you're coaching people who are in environments that are very challenging in that they're being either pushed to new levels, or they are being exposed to new problems, or they are growing in various ways. They're seeing problems that they've never seen before.
Mm.
If you were to separate them into men and women, what would be some of the biggest issues that you see men facing versus some of the biggest issues that you see women facing, if they're different? Maybe they're the same, but what are you seeing in terms of some of the challenges that men are seeing versus some of the challenges that women are seeing, if they're any different?
That's a really great question. And I think there are some differences, and there definitely are some similarities as well. So if we speak about men first, I think some of the challenges that they're experiencing are, well, one of the things that I've actually noticed recently in the past few weeks is that men, I tend to find, actually want to think about legacy and about creating a legacy, and you know, underlying everything. If you were to strip back all of the layers of what it is that they want, and understanding their vision and their goals and what it is that they're trying to achieve, and all of the blockers to that, when you peel back all of those layers, sitting below all of that, it just seems like what I found, just like I said recently, is that they want to create this legacy for themselves, and they're really thinking about, you know, what do I want my grandchildren to say about me when I leave this earth? What am I going to leave for my family? Also, you know, if I leave this organization, if I build up this organization to the scale that I want to get it to, how am I going to leave that organization? How do I want to leave those people? What is that legacy that I want to leave for them? So they're really looking at legacy. And I've always, I've been so curious as to if this is an instinctive thing or something that's just
Mhm.
naturally within us, or, you know, I don't try and make assumptions and box people into boxes, but it is interesting that that has come up quite often for me recently. And then women, it's a lot to do with confidence, and it's the imposter syndrome that comes up a lot with women in my coaching interactions. I think we still have a long way to go. Women have still got a long way to go to really feel confident in their abilities and to really own the fact that they've got so much value to add to the workplace. We're still living in a culture and a workplace environment where there is still gender inequality, there is still differences, and yeah, I think there's a long way to go, but I find that those are generally the themes that come up most often when we're talking about men versus women. What are some of yours? I'm curious, I'm really curious to hear if yours are
Yeah.
similar or different.
Well,
So
it's so interesting to hear you describe this because, and it's interesting to me that we've never talked about this before,
yeah.
I love that this is coming out. Uh, for men, I definitely find the same. I primarily coach men. I don't know if I
Mm,
tend to, I don't know if I tend to draw men because I have a very masculine side,
mhm,
but then have a feminine side. I'm not sure what it is, but so most of my clients are men. And yes, I would say the legacy, the vision is
mhm,
definitely there. That would be a primary focus. Um, because and I can't say because I would say that also along with that is that anything that is getting in the way of that legacy or that outcome that they envision for the company or for themselves or that long-term thing
mm,
is the problem to solve. It is the thing to fix.
right.
It is the thing to
Mm,
overcome so that this legacy, this bigger picture vision can be can come to fruition. And I think
mm,
that's part of what the stereotypical male leader of companies, that's one of the reasons why they're in that role is because of that legacy and that vision. At the
sure.
same time, it's not to say that women don't have that. I know that I think for my company, and I think very much like that as well. However, there's more of a, on the women's side, the women that I work with, I would say half of them have don't have the confidence issues
Mm,
or the imposter syndrome issues, but they think more in terms of uh, getting everything taken care of.
mm,
So
yeah.
it's almost a different. It may be, maybe it is a biological thing. I would not have said that years ago, but now maybe it is a biological thing. I don't know. However, what I do realize is that with being able to step back and see that bigger picture with men and women in leadership roles, there's definitely still a lot of um, not valuing women as much. There's
Mm,
definitely, I would say, in the experience that I've had personally and professionally and with the people that I work with, but it's not intentional. What I'm
mm,
seeing now is
yeah.
that in years past, in decades past, there would be situations where maybe someone obviously and
Mm,
consciously thought less of women in leadership roles or thought less of. Now it's not that as much. It's that that's a subconscious thing that's still happening both on
like a
the male and the
habit.
female.
Mm,
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
it's a thing that's still in the system, whether people want to call it patriarchy, whether they want to call it whatever, I don't know. But what I do know is that on both sides, for men and women, the impression I'm getting is that everyone's trying to do the best they can.
Mm,
And they just haven't quite figured that out yet. And there may still be some stereotypical things going on. And they're still trying to figure out what that looks like. It's just not as obvious as it was, say, in 3 decades ago, 5 decades ago. Now it's more of a subconscious thing. It's more of a, still trying to do the best everybody can.
Mm.
And some of that still includes lack of confidence. However, on the male side, I know that whether it's someone going in to do a pitch, whether it's someone going into a AGM or a big board meeting, that confidence is the number one emotion that any male or female leader looks to have going into any of those uncertain or important environments that they're looking for. That's what they're all looking for in order to feel that they're performing their best in that environment.
So true. Yeah. I think that's definitely, one of the strategies that's we both then work on with our clients, is generating that confidence in order to get the outcome that you're looking for at the pitch or the meeting or the conversation that you're going into. It'll always be excuse me.
Add that confidence. So what do you do for yourself? Is there a thought? Is there something that you coach or give people tips so that they can generate that confidence for themselves? How do you approach that, especially if it's coming up for some of the female clients and even the male clients who want to feel their best? What do you do to coach that?
Yeah, so one of the very simple tactics that I use is I always look at, excuse me, I always ask the question of, when was the last time? When was the last time you felt confidence? When was the last time? And it could be any time, it could be when you were feeling confident at the top of a ski run and you knew that you could get down and you were going to have the best time. But when was the last time you felt that emotion that you want to be able to generate for this event or for this meeting or for this pitch? And then think about that moment. Think about what it is that you were thinking during that time. What were you thinking when you stood at the top of the ski run? Or what were you thinking when you were, I don't know, when there's another time when was the last time you felt confident? Kari, tell me.
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I feel confident going into podcasts. So
There
there's a
you go.
level of
Yeah.
apprehension of getting it started and making sure I've got everything prepared, but I feel confident going in. And part of that is not only the preparedness, but the other part is the number of podcasts I've done. So
Yeah.
getting close to 300 of them, there's less of that
Wow.
apprehension or self-doubt or uncertainty that comes with not having the experience. However, for you to ask that, I think of times where I might be going into something that I'm not experienced in, because if we're not to rely on the experience or rely on having done it before for confidence, then what does that look like? And I remember a thought that I had back in, this is 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. How long? Yeah, 30 years ago. I was in university exams, and it was a level of stress that was different than levels of stress I'd had. I'd had some very stressful things in my life, but this was this level of time pressure. And if I don't pass these exams, they're weighted so much, then I don't get my degree. And I was in this, and they were one after another. How do I have the time? And I had this one thought that was, if I can get through this, I can get through anything. If I can get through this, I can get through anything.
Yeah.
And this is
So
before
good.
any coaching or any other tools that I had or anything. I just remember that thought going over and over just to keep me going and not spiral into some, panic of inaction and feeling stuck. And so there's typically a one-liner that can come in that can generate confidence for me. Sometimes it's just thinking of my daughter, who will say to me, "You've got this." And she says that to me because I've said it to her so many times. You've got this, Mom. I'm like, okay, I've got, how do you know? Oh, I guess you just believe. Okay, I guess I can just believe. I've got this.
Why not, right?
Okay, I've got this.
And it's as simple as that. And it again goes back to I think you said it so beautifully earlier, where you said you can have transformation with a single thought. There could be a transformation in how you feel going into a meeting or an event or a pitch, just with the single thought. It doesn't mean you're not going to feel nervous. It doesn't mean that you're not going to feel fear or any of those things, but you could also feel some of that confidence and generate some of that will help you through. And if you can get through that, you can get through anything. For me,
Well, go
yeah.
ahead. Yeah, say it.
No, I was just about to say that for me, the thoughts that I love, I use it for everything, is I can figure anything out.
Yeah.
I can just figure anything out. Like I can go into, even if I'm not prepared for a meeting or a conversation, well, I'm just going to figure it out. I'm going to go in and I'll just figure it out. And that happens, not a lot because I'm very prepared most often, but there are some times, I came into this conversation saying that I feel, outside of the recordings, just saying like, I feel like I've stretched myself a little bit too far. And I need to just reprioritize and redecide a few things. But I also know that even when I've stretched myself a bit too far, I will figure it out. And that really gives me so much power in any situation. I
I
interrupted you
really,
earlier as well.
no, this is great. I love that as a thought. I can figure anything out. And it reminded me, um, and that's what I really reinforce is that you say that thought enough times and and then you start to have it as a belief. And if you think that enough times about yourself, it becomes an identity. If you believe it about yourself and you've done it enough times, it becomes an identity. And then it's that I am someone who figures things out. I am someone who can figure anything out. I am a capable person. I had a client years ago who said this line, and it was, capable people are punished. And it was that because in this person's experience, they would see that over and over that they were the one that was capable to handle the things, but then that meant that they carried more. And I ended up coaching them on it at one point and just saying, is that really serving you to believe that? But then what happens is that if I question the thought, for many people, it's that, but it's true. And then they give me all the evidence and all the evidence and all the evidence. And don't allow themselves to see that there are other options besides what they're choosing to believe. Because there's so much evidence to show me that capable people are punished. So it's an interesting thing because even the thoughts where I can figure anything out, which is one that I like to believe about myself, it's like, well, I can figure that out. I can figure that out. I've figured out a lot of things. And that thought,
hello.
visitor. Roll
So
with the
cute.
punches.
Hi.
Even that thought can put boundaries around us that we may not want, simply because then we start to figure everything out ourselves versus
Also true.
going, I don't have to be the one to figure this out.
So true. Yeah.
This doesn't have to be mine to figure out. There's a who for that. And maybe I'm not the who for it. Maybe it's the who, not a how. Maybe it's and that one thing I think has helped a lot of leaders that I've worked with go from one realm to whatever the next realm is, because they kept trying to do it themselves, or they kept trying to figure it out themselves versus release it to someone or something or some or even let it go, just completely let it go. So those things I think can be really helpful to accept that it doesn't always have to be us, and I don't have to allow myself to carry it and then become overwhelmed and then become stressed out and then become that it's mine. It doesn't have to be mine. It can just be. It can just be.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a really great point because and I was going to say that maybe the difference is in how you feel when you're thinking it. If you're thinking, I can figure anything out, and you're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed, then maybe that's a really good sign that it's not serving you in some way. But I also think you make a really good point, and it's about re-looking some of these beliefs and thoughts and identities that we have for ourselves, because it could also be the thing that's stopping you from getting to that next level. If I'm continuing to think I can figure anything out, maybe that, I'd need to go and look at this, but maybe this is the thing that's stopping me from delegating some of the stuff that I maybe should be delegating, or like you said, letting go of some of those things because I keep telling myself I can figure it out. So it doesn't make me feel bad. It makes me feel very confident and capable, but it might also be the thing that's stopping me from just shifting to that next level or breaking through some kind of ceiling into that, that space that I want to get to next as well. It's worthwhile.
It's that what you just described there, in that being able to step back and being able to look at the thought and being able to question the thought. It's all of those things that I think are really the epitome of conscious leadership. They're the epitome of not just driving forward, not just focusing only on the legacy, or only, it's the stepping back to be able to really see and then be able to go, okay, is this what I choose to do? Is this what I choose to think? Is this am I being deliberate or intentional about that? Am I adding the consciousness to the leadership of myself, let alone the leadership of whatever company or whatever or whoever I'm leading? I want to make sure that there's a number of things that we could keep going on and on, but I want to ask this in 5 years question. There's more and more exponential growth happening in AI. There are more and more leaders recognizing that they could use coaching. It could be helpful for them. Where I'm just putting those as seeds or thoughts for you to respond to, in the question of where do you see your field going in 5 years? Things are changing so fast now. We've always looked at 1-year plans, 5-year plans, 10-year plans, and it's very hard for leaders to do that now because things are changing so quickly. So what do you see for yourself or for executive coaching in 5 years?
It's such a powerful question, especially with what's happening in the AI space. And knowledge is being commoditized. There are certain jobs that are now, this is such a dramatic term, but being taken over by AI. What I think is going to happen, and what I'm seeing just from some of the literature that I've been reading, is that there is going to be a lot more of this move towards helping leaders and helping people become more of who they are, having those, or really just working on those deeply unique human skills, those things like, emotional resilience and intelligence, empathy, that creativity, that really abstract level of creativity. Those are the things that are deeply human, but also connection. Connection with another human is not something that you can replicate with, any kind of technology. So I do believe that executive coaching is going to be a field that just keeps on growing. People are going to want to speak to another human and to connect with another human and have another human ask them questions to dig a bit deeper and to find the nuance and the subtleties from that kind of conversation. I also think that the same will happen from leadership. We're going to move into a space where leaders are going to need to look to lead more on a one-to-one level, as opposed to leading groups or leading teams. They're gonna have to start to focus on, how do I lead this person in a more individualized way? How can I get the best out of this particular individual? Because every individual is completely different and unique and has different drivers and motivators and different ways of working. And it's likely that they're also going to be on a different continent or remote, or have a completely different background to you. So you're going to need to figure out a way to coach them or to lead them differently. And one of the skills to do that is to also coach them. So I do think that there's also going to be this need for leaders to have coaching ability and coaching skills to coach their people in a more impactful and directed way as well.
It's
Those are
really
some of my
interesting
Mm,
because I when I hear you say that, I think of mentorship, and I feel
mm,
that, or it seems to me that there's just far less mentorship than there used to be. There used to
mm,
be more of an automatic mentorship, whereas now it it nobody talks about mentorship anymore,
mm,
really. I mean, I'm generalizing here, but I just haven't heard it as much as it used to be, say, 20 years ago. And that leading more on that one-to-one level is, what does this person need in order to become their best or perform their best, or be optimized in whatever role they have. And that that takes attention, and it takes awareness, and it takes focus on another human, and it
mm,
creates connection, which is
mm,
the antithesis, it seems, to some of the disconnection that comes from um, some of what we face with technology.
mm,
So it's interesting. I love how you've described this in becoming more aware of who we are emotionally, who we are as individuals, and interacting as individuals instead of leading in large groups, or this
mm,
is the way we do things here. Well, what's the way you do things? So
mm,
it's interesting to um, conceptualize, how do people do this in companies when 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 leaders often feel like their time is
mm.
so um, demanded upon or finite. And I think that's a question that's just a general, like, curiosity that I'm
Yeah,
wondering how it's going to pan out, because
yeah.
those are the
Well,
things that people always struggle with, is how much time do we have. But speaking of time, I know we
yeah.
we have a limited amount of time. Is there, you have such an incredible coaching style. You are chief people officer for Socium. You have clients. You have room to take on new clients. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for
Okay, you have
sure.
room to
Yeah.
take on new clients. Before we end off, what would you like the listeners to know about their own leadership, about life in general? What would you like to send as a message to listeners in their leadership? And I think that one's been sent really clearly already, and it's this: is that you're not alone. We didn't
Mm,
say that specifically, but we pointed to, you gave example after example of people who are perhaps in imposter syndrome, lacking confidence, looking for legacy, leading groups of people,
mm,
leading individual people. And all of these things are pointing to scenarios that people have often thought of, oh, I'm dealing with this alone. But one of the messages I think has gotten across with what you've shared is that you're not alone. Other people are going
mm.
through this too. It's okay to be experiencing what you're experiencing. Is there another message that you would like people to know, that you want to leave as we're wrapping this up?
Yes, definitely. And I think it's one of the things that I practice for myself because it's so powerful. So I think very often in this world, we're trying to optimize our external environment and we're forgetting about optimizing our internal environment. And our internal environment is actually, just to also add on to the question about where things are heading in the next 5 years, I think we are going to head into a position where we're going to be a lot more intentional with optimizing our internal environment, really understanding who we are, what we're feeling, being able to identify our emotions more readily, really understanding the thoughts that are going on in our minds. And I would say to any leader that's listening, that's where you're going to feel the most in control, is if you start to focus a lot of your attention on optimizing your internal environment. And then if I can offer one tip on that, and it's something, a piece of advice that I've heard along the way, and it's just be kind to yourself. Just be kind to yourself. talk to yourself like you would talk to your child or talk to your dog or a really, really deep loved one. Like, just be nice to yourself. If you can be nice to yourself, it's going to open up so much more for you and for everyone else around you as well. So just focus on optimizing your internal environment and just be nice and kind to yourself. We're all, like you said earlier, Kari, we're all just doing the best that we can. And I find that most often people are berating themselves just so much. We don't see it, but they're just doing it too much. And I think, we could just remove all of that altogether and the world would be a beautiful, amazing place. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have negative emotion, but just be nice to yourself and be kind. Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And that's such a beautiful note to finish on. If people want to reach you, they can find you, look for you on LinkedIn, Terez Rijkenberg.
Well done.
LinkedIn and Terez at socium10x.com. Those are zones that you can be reached at. I am so grateful to have this time with you. Your expertise, your heart, your kindness, your experience, just the way your presence shows up is a gift. So thank you for being with us. And
thank you. It's been amazing to be on here. Thank you, Kari. I really look up to you, and it's just so fun to have this conversation with you. I really appreciate it.
Oh, this has been wonderful. Thank you, and we'll speak soon.
Right. Okay. Bye.
Bye.